At the story's start, we are shown a man who is busy doing his work when suddenly he hears a girl violently screaming from the adjoining room. This is why the man decides to call the police. But the moment the police finally arrive on the scene, they discover this girl, who is now in an extremely peculiar condition. Clearly, a murderer has taken this young girl's life and has since escaped. The story now flashes back, moving to Boston City 3 years prior, where we are introduced to a woman who is named Loretta, who lives contentedly with her husband and her children. Loretta has a job at a newspaper which is called Record America. Loretta has a keen interest in solving various crimes, but the newspaper's own editor instructs Loretta to work inside the product review department instead. One day, Loretta is just doing her job when she happens upon a news story about a girl in the newspaper whom somebody had killed. Loretta holds on to the cutting from this newspaper with her, and she notices that similar news had appeared in the paper before this time. And this new girl has also been murdered just like the previous 2 girls were. And from this, Loretta understands that there must be a single killer who has killed all these girls. Loretta goes to see her own mother, and Loretta then finds out from her mother that a girl has recently died in one of her own neighbors. This is why Loretta's mother warns Loretta to please be careful. For this reason, Loretta takes the article she had collected, and she shows this article to her own boss, the editor. And she explains to him that there is a single killer who is responsible for killing these girls. And I really want to work on this case. As a result, his editor agrees to let her work on this case. Loretta then begins her work on the very next day, where she visits many different people and starts to inquire. Loretta goes to see a particular man here, because the girl who had only just recently died, this same man had been the one to see her first. So the man tells her that the girl had been killed in a merciless fashion. Something was also stuck inside her legs, which was itself an incredibly painful thing to see. Consequently, Loretta goes to the local hospital to view the post-mortem report. Here she is able to see the picture of that same girl, and she is extremely surprised after she sees the picture. Just as the man had said, the girl was in the exact same condition. Loretta publishes this entire story on the front page the following day. Because of this particular news, the atmosphere inside the press heats up once more, and every single press commissioner begins asking questions. This prompts the commissioner to go directly to the American office and tell the newspaper's editor to stop publishing this kind of news. This is just spreading unnecessary fear among the people. For this reason, the editor summons Loretta to his main office and says that we will have to stop working on this particular case. Loretta becomes very sad hearing this, and then she goes back to her house. As soon as she arrives at the front door of her house, she sees that Kelly is already inside her house. Kelly is actually her husband's own sister. When Loretta finally walks inside of the house, Kelly then gets up and goes away from there. The next day, a car is seen following an elderly woman, and when this older woman finally goes into her house, that man then follows her inside, and he murders this old woman. Then Loretta also gets informed about this new development, and she is summoned to the office. Jane is also present inside the office, where the editor then says that you and Jane will have to work on this together, and you both must find out the truth. Who is it that's killing these women? For this reason, these two immediately get to work. And the old woman, whose name was Jane Sullivan, they then attempt to locate her only cousin, whose name we learn is Arnold Sullivan. And so Mr. Sullivan is asked, what was the state of his cousin's body? But the very next day, the killer goes inside an apartment, where he ends up killing another girl who had been used to living all alone. Loretta gets some information about something. So till then she also arrives at this apartment. Jane is also here. She speaks with a policeman at the scene, so he informs the policeman that this woman's body was also discovered in the same state, like the very first 4 women. Loretta and Jane return to their office. They meet a photographer, and he proposes, I want to publish your photos in the newspaper, so everyone knows who the women are working on this case. Loretta and Jane are pleased, but their family members become extremely angry. They are fearful since a newspaper photo could put their lives in danger. It is Loretta who names this murderer the Boston Strangler. The year is now 1963. One day, Loretta receives a call from Jane, who informs her another girl has been killed, just a young girl this time. Loretta's husband warns her to stay out of these matters, but Loretta remains incredibly stubborn. She defies him, leaves home, and heads to the location where the girl was found dead. There, Loretta and Jane speak with a woman. This woman recounts that an unidentified man had previously come to her home, but she told him, "My husband is home right now." Because of this, the man departed from there. Furthermore, the woman provides a description of the man's appearance. That evening, Loretta returns to her house, where she receives a call from the killer. Yet there is no sound from the other end, only the distinct noise of breathing. Loretta continues to get these silent calls repeatedly. Her husband even answers one of these calls, but again, nobody speaks from the other line. This causes Loretta's husband to become angry with her. Loretta informs Jane about this. The following day, an unidentified man approaches another girl. He gains entry into the girl's home and then murders her. Jane soon learns about this latest killing, so she visits the hospital for information. There, Jane discovers that the deceased girl's name was Patricia and that she had been pregnant. This revelation leads Jane to the place where Patricia was employed. At that location, Jane learns from a receptionist Patricia had been in a relationship with her boss, even though he was already a married man. Jane later meets with the family of another victim, a girl who was murdered whose name was Beverly. Jane speaks with her mother there. Beverly's mom tells her, "My daughter practically lived at the church." This information leads Loretta to visit the church, too. There, she meets a man who was friends with Beverly. This friend says Beverly had always been a good girl, but she was deathly afraid of her friend, a man named Daniel. This information leads Loretta to Daniel's house to speak with him. However, Loretta is there by herself and becomes frightened, fearing that Daniel might try to kill her, so she flees. Loretta visits the lead detective, handing over all the investigative work she has completed. Based on this information, the detective brings in Nelson for questioning and administers a lie detector test. However, Nelson is not deemed guilty, nor did he murder anybody. Additionally, the detective informs Loretta that he had already interrogated Daniel, who is also not the killer. Loretta becomes completely consumed by her work, causing the distance between herself and her husband to grow. Her husband reveals that he received a promotion, saying, "I will only be home once or twice a week." The following day, Loretta arrives at her office and soon receives a phone call from New York. She is informed that girls in New York have been dying just like in Boston. "But we have captured the killer." They give the killer's full name. Loretta relays all this to her editor. Later, while Loretta is home alone, she feels a stranger is watching her. Additionally, Loretta discovers a photograph of herself and Jane inside her mailbox. A large red cross has been marked over the photo. This terrifies Loretta, who tells Jane about it the next day. Jane informs her editor that, effective immediately, he must not print their photo in the newspaper. Loretta later meets a man at work. This man tells Loretta something. "Perhaps the Boston authorities aren't sharing all their information with us, and maybe the Boston police are concealing something." Then, this man mentions the name Albert DeSalvo to her. He explains the police arrested him several days ago for assaulting women. This information sends Loretta directly to the police station, where she looks up the official record of Albert DeSalvo. This is how Loretta discovers the truth. Perhaps he might actually be the killer. For this reason, Loretta visits her detective and presents him with the complete file on DeSalvo. Her detective says that the man has been locked up for a very long time. He couldn't have killed everyone. But then Loretta discovers that DeSalvo had been briefly released on bail, and almost immediately after he was finally let go, he killed a woman. Afterwards, a particular woman named Sophie witnessed DeSalvo. Loretta reports this new information to the detective, who then says that he had already brought Sophie down to the jail for the purpose of identifying the supposed killer. However, she did not point to DeSalvo. Instead, Sophie identified a completely different man, an individual by the name of John Nasher. Meanwhile, DeSalvo becomes incredibly famous, so much so that an extremely famous author wants to publish a book about his story. This leads to DeSalvo having a 40-minute interview with this same writer, during which DeSalvo states that he is willing to admit he killed everyone, on the condition that his formal statement cannot ever be used against him in court. The writer agrees. Later, Loretta meets with her detective and informs the man that DeSalvo has now admitted everything. This is the primary reason the case is officially being closed. Consequently, the newspaper's editor also informs Loretta that she must find another job, since at this point the investigation is totally closed. However, Loretta still wanted to keep working on this same case, because she knows that there simply cannot just be one killer. The narrative now jumps forward, returning to the present day, where a killer murdered a girl. This happens to be the exact same scene that was depicted right at the very beginning of the film. For this reason, news reaches Loretta about a young girl who has died in Michigan. This prompts Loretta to go directly to Michigan for her own investigation, and she meets the man, the very same man who originally called Loretta. This particular man reveals that the killer has also murdered a great many girls around here. And so this man gives Loretta a complete file detailing all of the murdered girls. Through this, Loretta discovers that this same killer is murdering all these girls using the exact same pattern. Here, Loretta happens to look at the newspaper. Inside, there is a clear photograph of Daniel, and Loretta suddenly suspects that maybe Daniel is somehow the real killer. It is why she explains everything she knows to Jane. Jane then goes to a mental hospital. There, she makes a discovery that Daniel had been admitted there for some time, and at that time, DeSalvo was also being kept there too. Loretta reports this information to her detective and the police, who then arrest Daniel and begin to interrogate him. However, Loretta soon discovers that her former detective has actually quit his job and has now begun working for the people who are currently producing a movie about DeSalvo, since the detective stood to gain a substantial amount of money from it. Loretta goes there and confronts the detective. She then tells him that she absolutely must have the recording from the night that the writer originally spoke with DeSalvo. The detective hands the important recording over to Loretta, and Loretta begins to listen to these tapes very carefully. Then Loretta realizes that the entire interview was completely scripted, and also that DeSalvo is not the actual killer. He is only accepting everything for the money. This is why Loretta decides to meet with DeSalvo's brother, telling him directly, "I know for a fact your brother is innocent. I am able to get him released." Because of this, Loretta receives a call from DeSalvo that night. Loretta tells DeSalvo that she is aware he is lying. DeSalvo responds, "You should come and meet me tomorrow. I am going to tell you the real truth." However, DeSalvo's own brother was also overhearing these things, who is an inmate. So he then murders DeSalvo. And then Loretta discovers that DeSalvo has been murdered. For this reason, Loretta travels to the jail the following day, where she happens to meet with a certain woman who gives her a man's address. "You must go to this address and meet this man." Loretta meets this man, Harrison, at that location. Harrison explains, "I was also held inside the same cell where DeSalvo was kept, but Daniel was also there right with us. But at times Nasser would also come around there, and he used to show them all the newspaper clippings, and explains that everything DeSalvo accepted was just part of Nasser's plan." So DeSalvo agreed to everything, because DeSalvo's own lawyer really wanted to make his name. This is the reason Daniel and Nasser worked to persuade DeSalvo, so he would agree to accept everything. Loretta visits the jail to meet Nasser. She asks him directly why he murdered Sophie. Nasser replies, "I did not actually kill Sophie, and I never killed a single girl. What you think you're seeing is nothing. You see one single murderer, but it is entirely possible that there are multiple murderers." Loretta explains all of this to her editor, saying this is not the work of just one murderer, but is instead the work of many different people. The goal was that all the women would be killed using the same distinct patterns. The very next day, inside her newspaper, she goes on to publish an article titled Boston Stranglers. As the movie concludes, we are shown actual photographs of the real Loretta, where it is explained that Loretta would later become a truly award-winning reporter. Due to her dedication, Loretta divorced her husband, James. However, Jane continued to work as an investigative reporter for the following 30 years. Loretta and Jane also went on to become very good friends. Afterwards, no one was ever charged with the murder of Daniel, and George Nasser remained incarcerated in jail even after this time. I trust that you all have enjoyed this